So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this series of webinars. And today we're going to be discussing annual reviews. And obviously, welcome, Noel. Thanks again for your time. It's very gracious of you. We know you're quite busy, so it's really, really good to have you to discuss this topic with you this morning. Today's session, as everyone can see on our backgrounds behind us, is how to finally break up with annual reviews, okay? And the whole purpose of, frankly, is to move towards a more impactful, more people-centric model of continuous performance. And obviously, that does include reviews as well. So a little bit of an agenda for today. I'm going to be discussing a topic with Noel. We have some questions on it. We're going to be getting his insights, and then we're going to be moving into the product as well to show you basically how Frankly works in terms of reviews and how we really do make performance management a continuous conversation, bringing all that really key data from your people, from those conversations throughout the year into those important reviews, whatever the review style is happening, whatever, if it's end of month or end of quarter or end of year reviews as well. Okay. We will have time for questions and answers at the end, and also all of this content will be sent out by email too in the next few days. If anyone hasn't signed up for our blogs and our content, please do. You'll be given a link, obviously, an email that we do send out, but everything is available on the website as well. You'll be able to sign up there. And also my details will be in the follow-up emails as well. So if anyone would like to book a private demo with myself to go through reviews or any other parts of Frankly, I'd be more than happy to do so as well. So, Noel, I think we'll get right into it, if that's okay.
Sounds good, Claire. Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. So look, we are all familiar with the performance review. Okay. The annual review is the most traditional one, probably most well known. Let's talk about some of the problems that arise when we use this model.
Yeah. So, more and more, I think, let's just take it from a business perspective. I think start there, like more and more businesses need to be way more agile in terms of how they plan. The kind of the big 3-year planning around where we're going to go, especially in the current climate. I think there's so much uncertainty as to the business model of the future. So it doesn't really make sense from our perspective that people are in an annual cycle then around, performance reviews and goals that are probably out of date. But more than that, I think the people we're all trying to attract, retain, and develop have all grown up in a digital world whereby, there's real-time gratification, real-time feedback in their personal lives on social media, and also on-demand delivery. So everything's on demand. So this idea of once a year sitting down to have a conversation around performance isn't really stacking up, and it's not stacking up on multiple fronts. For a manager, it's usually a huge burden of work. It's a big end of year, end of business year task. For an individual, they're coming into and not really sure what's going to happen. And there's just so much missed opportunity, right? So leaving it to an annual, where great things happen throughout the year, they're going to get missed. You're going to be thinking about recency. Recency bias starts to creep in, where I only remember the last couple of weeks or the last great thing that someone did. And one really interesting one, we've been doing a lot of research on proximity bias. So again, in a hybrid model of work where some people are showing up in the office versus sitting at home, there's been a strong correlation that people that are showing up in work are doing better in performance reviews.
Interesting.
And yeah, it's really interesting. So why do I say that? Because I think we need to have a consistent way of checking in more regularly than leaving it to, again, if I'm going to see you every day in the office, versus a colleague who's doing really great things but working from home.
Yeah.
If we're leaving it to once a year, then it's going to be a real challenge to be consistent and to be fair. And yeah, the last one on it, is that more and more people want time with their manager. They want more regular input. They want more feedback on how they're going, where the business is going. Are they developing? Are they doing the right things? So again, that once a year, where if we're just leaving it to that once a year, people are going to feel disconnected and disengaged. And again, back to hybrid and back to remote, that just no longer stacks up. So, this the true nature of annual review and annual appraisal, I really feel is a thing of the past from a business perspective, from a people expectation perspective.
So true. So we're proposing a move to continuous performance reviews. Can you tell us a little bit, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, it means different things for different companies, but it's really, I've touched on some of it there, Claire, but it's really about how do we start having more regular, meaningful conversations that have the impact and have the focus that our people are looking for, that our managers need to lead out on, and it's more coaching than managing, and it's more context driven. So how I would think about it, and how we have approached Frankly, is really centered around better regular conversations, so better one-to-ones. The appraisal always has a place, that kind of formalizing a review is very important, but it's the inputs to that that are more important. So if I'm not having regular one-to-ones, I miss so much opportunity to connect with my people and see how they're going, what's important to them, what I need to do for them as a manager. So if we take an annual calendar, when we think about moving to continuous performance reviews, it's about what are the things that our people want from us, and they want more regular feedback and they want more connection as a manager. So let's start there. But let's also start to measure engagement. Let's also start to separate out operational work and career development. So let's start having a meaningful conversation more regularly around, how do you feel your career is progressing in the business? Are we still on track? Are your goals making sense? Is it clear? Is it clear today where the strategy or where the business is going? Because things are shifting all the time. And if we're constantly doing that, then it starts to really stack up. So it's that idea of breaking up the year into, you might start moving from once a year to doing a full review. But it's really centered on regular engagement and regular conversations. So the one thing from this morning that I would really like to just emphasize is that, how do we think about one-to-ones? How do we start to roll them out consistently? And how do we start to measure the impact that they're having and what's being discussed? What's the follow-up? Is there actions coming out of them? And making sure that our managers feel like they have the tools, the training and the support to make those meetings really impactful.
Okay, amazing. What are some of the key benefits that come from continuous reviews, do you think?
Well, again, it's context and it's relevant. So big believer that regular performance in engagement, regular performance conversations drive employee engagement. And what I mean by that is that, if we're meeting and think about the one-to-one again, it's about how are you doing? A chance to really check in on well-being, especially in a distributed or remote model. If we're not doing that regularly, we don't really have a measure of how our people are. How are they feeling about their workload? There's an awful lot of emphasis being put on burnout and manager workloads, and everyone, everyone's had a tough time of it. So there's a huge benefit there around connection, building meaningful relationships with people, removing blockers, being able to have a conversation that's centered around how someone is doing or what's not working for them. Again, I think that's really strong for a manager. But also underperformance, let's not just come here today talking about all the good things. If somebody's truly struggling or it's not working out, one of the mantras within our own business is finding what works faster. So if we can get closer to what's not working, then we can do something about it. That's a huge benefit of more regular check-ins, and also an opportunity to focus on career. Not just leaving it to, in January you're interested in moving to a marketing role, but that could change. And so it's that the benefits are really, really twofold. It's for a manager, it gets them much closer to how the people are, and to an employee in any business, I think they're going to feel more connected, more engaged, and feel like they are being supported, rewarded more frequently at a time when we need that, when there's, you know, when a business is so fluid in terms of what's going to happen next.
Yeah, amazing. What are some of the stumbling blocks that we encounter when we transform our performance review processes, do you think?
Yeah, it's like, oh, more work. Here comes more work, you know, got to do all these one-to-one. I think that's one of the big things we come up against, right? It's
Sure.
but it's taking the first step, you know. Every journey starts with that first step. So it's not looking at it as more work today, or, you know, this whenever we hear frequency, we hear, oh, there's going to be more meetings and there's going to be, it's actually not. It's been really clear about the impact, been really focused on what continuous performance conversations and check-ins look like. And thinking about that dreaded end of year where you've got to do this huge amount of work as a manager, you're actually breaking it up throughout the year. Yeah, so, you know, change as well. I think resisting change at leadership. Some managers are uncomfortable maybe of what they're going to uncover. Like, you know, they don't, again, managers having one-to-ones, having structured conversations, giving constructive feedback more regularly. It doesn't come natural to us. But again, there has to be a development piece there for managers and for all employees, that, you know, why we're doing this. So a really clear comm strategy around why we're doing it. And also, like, just putting those rituals or putting those that framework in place, that takes time, and it is an investment. There's an implementation to it, but the benefits are, you know, are so they're tenfold on a traditional approach, I would say. And if we start to measure things like retention and engagement, I think that's where it's going to really see the benefit of investing in something like this.
Okay, amazing. And what are some of the steps we need to take in order to make the move to continuous performance management?
Yeah, it's a great one. I think buy-in, you know,
sure.
why are we doing it? Yeah, exactly. It is. So we have to get leadership buy-in. We have to have people managers are such a core component of this, you know, like we have to get managers on board. Again, coming back to those rituals around one-to-ones, if a manager chooses not to lead out on those, this can really, the wheels can come off really quickly.
Absolutely.
They're so
a stakeholder within this kind of process.
Exactly, Claire. Yeah, so true. They really are, and you know, we see that all the time, right? We see that when leadership get excited, there's high energy. It really comes together when managers and people managers get behind it, and they start to see that they make a commitment. You know, it's not one-to-one, and maybe month two, it's a really busy month and one-to-ones don't go as well, but it's not about giving up so soon. So it's that, so communicating a really solid comms plan, stakeholders on board, and then there's an investment, you know. There's no doubt about it that today we need to be more digitally led in how we work.
1000%.
You know, we grow through giving people flexibility, and flexibility looks like the opportunity to work from different places, and the opportunity to hire remotely in different markets, and to then facilitate all of this, there has to be an investment in tooling. And so that's one of the things that has to be top of mind. But if we don't know what we're trying to achieve, it's very hard to invest in tooling, you know. So you have to start with, what is it we're looking to do? What buy-in do we need? And what's a really clear comms plan as to why we're doing it? Because as soon as we start talking about performance management, people have had such bad experiences that their backs go up and they think, oh, here we go again, you know, here's going to be another, and what I suppose what we're really trying to emphasize is that this is a completely re-energized, reimagined way of approaching this, and it's people-centric, so it's going to benefit everyone.
Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for those insights. That's fantastic. So
No problem.
I'm going to share my screen now. I'll be moving to the product. I'll be focusing on, one or two key features today. And if anyone has any questions on the product, please just raise your hand. I'd be more than happy to take them. And of course, as I said, for anyone who's just joined too, we will be doing, this is being recorded and will be sent out in the email follow-up with everyone as well. Okay. So let's jump in and have a look at what's actually going on with the product with regards to performance reviews. So the first thing I'd like to do is obviously to introduce where reviews come into Frankly, and how I suppose we bring in continuous performance management into reviews. Most importantly, it's really what we're trying to emphasize today. So I'd like to start off by explaining that within the product here, you can see a My Reviews feature. So for anyone new to Frankly, or for any of our customers watching, obviously you'll be aware that this is where individuals would come in to actually complete a review, okay? Whether you're doing your self-reflection or whether you're doing a peer review, an upward review, or a manager review, you would come in here. This is your space for you to be able to action your reviews. For anyone who would be an admin or creating a review within Frankly, you'll know obviously down here in our admin section, we have a review cycles piece. Okay, this is where reviews are created. Review cycles are obviously from birth created here within the product. Okay, you can see here lots of different reviews happening for this organization that Jane here works in. So this is just to give you a flavor of what you can do. And just briefly, I'm not going to go into actually setting up a review today because it's a pretty straightforward process. If anyone would like to see that process, I'd be more than happy to do a private demo with any participants or any attendees at a separate stage, and you can sign up for that directly with my Calendly link, which will be in the email follow-up. But just to show you briefly today, when you're creating a review, it's very easy to do. It's a step-by-step process. Frankly guides you along all the information that you need to input. You can see here, we've got different steps within the process. I mentioned earlier, we have self-reflection reviews, manager-led reviews, upward review, which is new, and it's me reviewing my own manager, and then peer reviews as well. You can enter in your recipients, and obviously that can be, filtered down to individuals or teams or whole departments within your organization. And you can see as well, we have built-in question bank templates for all the different style of reviews, plus assessment groups as well. So for anyone who would like to see that step-by-step process being built, I will do a private demo at a separate time. So that's obviously where reviews are being built. But what I really would like to focus on today is My Reviews and how we bring in continuous performance management into that end of period review, whatever you're doing, if it's a quarterly review or an annual or a biannual review. And the first way I'd like to explain it is, as Noel really touched off, it's about the inputs that go into the review, okay? And for us, a key part of that is those one-to-one meetings, those, those key regular touch points with your people that managers, are really the drivers of, to bring in all that really key data towards that end of period review. So just briefly highlighting our one-to-one meetings feature, this is obviously where these key meetings happen, those regular touch points with your individuals. This is the continuous performance management that drives all of that really good information. So you can see here with Jane, obviously this is a nice strong catalogue of all those conversations that Jane has with all her stakeholders, okay? Some are her peers, some are her direct reports, and one obviously would be her own manager as well, okay? So all of these conversations are happening, and if we just jump into one quite quickly just to show you a regular catch-up between Jane, the manager, and Trixie, her direct report. All of these conversations you can see here are being recorded, okay? All of this really important data. So it's all of this information that's going to be brought in as as key content to the actual review part. So as Noel mentioned, all of that really, really important input happening continuously throughout the year, and then we can reflect on that, in those important reviews at the end of a period, okay? So going into our My Reviews piece now, which, as I said, is the space where that end of period review will take place, whether it's quarterly, biannual, or annual, okay? We can see here with Jane, she has 2 different reviews happening at the moment. So just to recap for anyone who isn't aware, we have 4 styles of reviews available within Frankly. We have the self-reflection, a manager-led, an upward review, which is me reviewing my manager, and we have a manager-led review, which is obviously my manager reviewing my performance. So for Jane, right now, you can see she's got a live self-reflection review happening, okay? And she also has some manager reviews to do. So we'll have a quick look at the self-reflection first. So you can see here with this sample template, all the questions being asked. Jane has the ability here to obviously answer the questions and link goals in. So another good way of bringing in that continuous performance management as well. All that key work that Jane has been working on throughout that time period. Jane has the ability to come in and link any of the goals in here to supplement her answers as well. Okay. Also, if you look up here, most importantly on the bar up here on the right hand side, this is all that key content that Jane has that's going to impact what she puts down in her self-reflection, all the continuous performance data. So you can see here, obviously, another list of her goals here, any praise that has been given to Jane by anyone within the organization, okay, which is really, really important. It's not just the one-to-one meetings, but we have other features that supplement performance management as well throughout a time period, and feedback is a really, really strong supporter of this as well. So we can see here any praise that's been given to Jane within that time period as well, and her competencies too, another key important one. So if Jane wants to be commenting on her competencies that she's been demonstrating throughout that time period as well, she has the ability to look at these here. Okay, so we can see here a list below of all of Jane's direct reports as well. So we can view them from this list here, but also if we would just jump back one screen, we can see here within the manager's reviews, obviously a list of all those direct reports belong to Jane that she needs to do manager-led reviews on. So the first one we look at is a submitted review here, okay, for Gavin. So if we click into this review here, this review has been completed by Jane. So we can see here she's been answering all the questions on Gavin's performance through that time period. And again, also on the right-hand sidebar here, all the information that is going to, be really impactful throughout that time period that Jane and Gavin have discussed. Number one here being obviously Gavin's own self-reflection, just really good content for Jane for her manager-led review of him. And if we look into an active manager-led review that is happening at the moment for Trixie, another one of her direct reports here, we can see Jane is obviously in the middle of doing a manager-led review for Trixie. So a mix of Likert scale and text questions you can see here, okay? So she's coming in here, she's answering the questions, and again, most importantly, she can link goals belonging to Trixie by looking for the goals icon here. If she wants to supplement any of her answers here, she has a list of all of Trixie's goals. Also, most importantly, as we said, the right-hand bar here is a treasure trove of information of that performance-led conversations between Jane and Trixie and all the other information. So we have, most importantly, all of the notes from the one-to-one meetings that they have, as I showed you just a few minutes ago in that one-to-one meetings feature, all accessible for Jane up here. We have Trixie's goals here, all the ones she's been working on through this time period. Any praise given for Trixie within the business, really, really useful. Any ideas that Trixie has shared, that she has submitted to the business, Jane can view these. Any feedback that she has sent or received as well, really, really useful information for Jane to be able to comment on. Again, Trixie's competencies. If you're a competencies-driven organization, you can have each individual's competencies up here. Again, really useful for Jane, the manager, to be commenting on, and any tasks as well that she has assigned to Trixie in that time period as well. So this is how we essentially bring in performance management conversations throughout the year into that end of period review by giving the individual who is actioning the review all of that information to be able to comment on. It's not just an assessment, asking questions at the end of the year. It really is a reflection on all of the, interactions between manager and employee and other stakeholders within the business as well being reviewed within the My Reviews piece. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Selena, you might just check. Does anyone have any questions for me whilst I'm in the product on the My Reviews piece?
Nothing so far. They're quiet today.
All quiet today. Okay, perfect. So I just actually had one more question for Noel here. just want to finish the product part here. So Noel, if you have time, I'd love to just ask you this one final question.
Of course, yeah.
Can you give us some key pieces of advice for running more impactful reviews? I think that's something that everyone here would probably like to know.
Yeah, it's a great question, Claire. Look, I think a lot of what you've shown there covers it off, but it's the being effective in terms of having like effective performance management. And it's not just one way. It's no longer just a manager's perspective on things. So that idea of doing 360 reviews, giving the individual the space to reflect on their own performance.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I know we just touched on it, but this idea of an upward review is so important. Like managers, again, need more feedback on how they're doing in terms of managing and leading. So it's really about building this well-rounded perspective of how people are performing. And then it's also shifting the focus. Like, so it's really, are we here to manage performance, or is it really about developmental? You know, like even if you just think of managing someone's performance, like it's really about performance developmental conversations, where people want to go, how do we get closer to that, and I think it's about making improvements. So it's really about breaking down that annual approach into more iterations, like thinking of performance in a quarter. So business performance, team performance, individual performance, and that iteration to improve. And if we're focused on development, we should be then looking to the future. So, you know, never mind if we had a bad or an underperforming quarter, but what are we going to do next quarter that's going to improve?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, there's some of the things I think about straight away, and also driving accountability through deadlines, you know, so having that kind of concept of more regular check-ins have to happen. There's deadlines around when to happen. There's deadlines around follow-up.
Yeah.
If there's action for me as a manager, there's notifications and deadlines around when you do your review process, and it's automating all of that. So this is not putting a big burden on HR or on an admin team. And so to facilitate that, it has to be digitally led. So you showed it really succinctly, but like if I'm having the regular check-ins, these data, this rich catalog of digital notes, starts to really inform how we're doing, where we're going.
Absolutely.
And guess what? As an employee, I'm going to feel much better about that, because I feel, okay, this is a two-way conversation.
Yeah.
This is no longer just a perspective on how I'm doing. And I think, they're just some of that has impact. People are going to feel more connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said earlier on, like really using performance development conversations to drive employee engagement. I think that's the most important thing. And not seeing employee engagement in isolation, or seeing performance management in isolation.
For sure. Noel, we have a quick question here for one of our attendees, and it just says, Thanks, Noel. To be clear, are you saying the recommendation is not to have a marked time where you review individuals' performance annually, even if you do quarterly reviews already?
Sorry, let me just see the question. I think, look, it's a really good question. This has to be in the context of your business, so I absolutely think it's very important that if there's a formal process around, everybody has to do an annual appraisal or a biannual appraisal, that absolutely should happen if that's the organization's approach. It's very important, though, to understand why. So if we're just doing an annual appraisal because that's linked to compensation management, I don't believe that's the right approach. Those two things need to be separated.
Okay.
But what I would say, like if you're doing quarterly reviews already, that's brilliant. But make sure that those inputs and what's been captured there is going to feed into the overall annual appraisal. So how we think about it is that an end of year review should be a marker for a summary conversation of what's happened over each quarter. But we're also using that time to plan for the next year. So like we should be having a conversation around, Claire, look, this has been a really good year. We're going to reflect on all the great one-to-ones or the quarterly reviews we've done and where we feel you're going in terms of your career. But what are some of your priorities for the next quarter? And it's framing it that way. So it's about inputs, it's about saving people, managers time, but it's about being really fair that, that these inputs are being captured and are reflective of what we discussed. The individual as an employee feels like that's fair. That's what we did discuss. There's some of the things I needed help with and I got help. But formalizing it, absolutely. I'm not saying throw that out, but be really clear as to why, what is the purpose of an annual review? Why are we here to do it? And I hope that answers the question, but that's how we think about it.
Okay, amazing. Was there any other questions to I think just response from that is to say thank you very much. Exactly, the annual review is designed to summarize the year in review and year to go and linked only to development and career.
Super.
So thank you very much for the comment. That's fantastic. Is there any other questions that we can answer from any of the attendees today? We'd be more than happy to do so.
Claire, while we're waiting for people maybe to ask questions, I can throw in a few that came in via social media over the past couple of weeks while we've been gearing up for the webinar.
That would be great.
If that's okay. So a couple of people have asked, well, actually, no, 2 people have asked about the time commitment of continuous performance reviews versus the annual review. And someone said, are continuous performance reviews not more time consuming across the year than just having one annual? What would you say to that, Noel?
It's a great one. Yeah, again, Selena, we got to break this down. That for me, that's a myth because the time we put in is what we get out of it, right? So, there's a great stat. I think it's 85% of US workers are more willing to move job for an unfair annual review if they don't feel like it's been reflective of the work they've done throughout the year. So just think about that, like 85% of people, if they don't feel like it's going to go as it should, they're willing to move. So we've got this huge investment in attracting people to a company, hiring, onboarding people. And so many times then the wheels start to come off around performance. It's like, we'll get to that in 12 months. And some of the companies that we work with, their managers are reporting upwards of 18, 20 hours saved doing an annual appraisal because they have been checking in. They have the data points that you've shown, Claire, around regular one-to-ones. So they have all their notes in one place. So what feels like an investment in time up front, it's a huge saving over time. Yeah. But the time invested in it is going to make people feel much better about it. Yeah. So I just think it's been intentional, right? It's been intentional around having one-to-ones because if they're not happening, and then I've been there, I've managed a big team in New Zealand, end of year, you're scrambling, you're looking through emails, you're going back through old notebooks that were thrown in the cupboard, you're reaching out to customers and clients and trying to get some feedback on how Claire was doing, but it's all too late, and that can be a huge stress, and that can be a huge amount of hours at the end. Yeah. But I can almost guarantee it's not going to be fair, and it's not going to be reflective of how Claire has felt the year has gone. Yeah.
And just to add to that as well, I mean, the literal time spent for people, who would have done reviews manually or those conversations being recorded manually, the literal time that's less spent on doing those in a product like Frankly, because it's so scalable, is I would say there's a lot of hours less worked building those reviews and having those conversations when you're using a tool like Frankly.
Yeah, completely agree. Anywhere I've ever worked, the annual review is kind of taken over everyone's November or whatever month it is, and everyone kind of
and obviously then
blinkered.
for managers, for HR, for whoever the admins is, you know, the time spent, the less time spent that's, you know, when the information has been collated and obviously presented back at a tool like Frankly, that, you know, it's a huge amount of less work as well.
For sure. We had another question actually about employee buy-in, and is it necessary to kind of like reframe reviews for employees if we are moving from a more formal, traditional system that everyone's familiar with to something continuous? Do we need to kind of be, I suppose, intentional about how we communicate that to people?
Absolutely. I think it's the number one thing that we see, you know, is that because there's been so many bad experiences, people, you know, if we invest in something like this as a new approach, then framing it the old way, people are just, their eyes are going to glaze over. So that idea of a really strong communication plan around what is it, why are we doing it, and what does it mean for me as an individual? What's going to be the impact on my day-to-day, my month-on-month, my career, and my quarter? And so, yeah, like framing it as performance conversations or developmental performance development, I think it's going to be much stronger. But it's something that we talked about before, Selena. It's as soon as you start introducing continuous or regular, I think you're going to get more buy-in, because people are going to go, oh, okay, I now be heard. I wanted more time with my manager. I'm now going to get it. This is going to be much more context driven. It's going to be much more relevant as to what's going on in my day to day. So we should be thinking about the language around continuous or regular check-ins. But my goodness, if we communicate that, then we better start actioning it. You know, we can't say we're moving to this and it's going to be development led, and then we just get into one-to-ones and we're only talking about operational day-to-day and how are you going against target and why is this not going to plan. So we have to make the space for career conversations. We have to make the space for regularly checking in on how the individual is doing, but is it clear to where they're going, and are their current goals and their role, is it making sense and stacking up?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great response. Thanks, Noel. One other question that we had, that someone responded to one of our emails and asked, what questions should we include to bring career development into performance reviews? And I think that's because we've seen so much research lately about how important career development is and how much it influences people's decision to stay or go.
Yeah. Again, I like to think of it as, you know, if we're serious about rolling out one-to-ones and moving to this more regular review format, that there should be a dedicated conversation around career. Because, you know, if we're just having a regular check-in, a half-hour check-in, it's very likely that we're going to get sucked into what's happening today, you know, where are you at with goal? But career is a whole other area. So thinking about everyone having a developmental goal, thinking about it being really clear within whatever product you're using where I can go next. So like what we're building in Frankly at the minute around pathways, you know, so where can I take my career? But also empowering that individual to go and look across the roles within the organization, to be able to think about, okay, I'm here today, but I don't feel stuck because I know I can move left and right. I know I can progress into a leadership role with the support of my manager. So it's always kind of, it's always framing it around, I talked earlier about managers being coaches. So it's about moving from what's going well today as to, you know, what needs to change, or do you have the tools you need to progress in your career? So it's framing those kind of conversations. And I think the best place to start is to separate out the two. It's to have, you know, thinking about, maybe it's quarterly. I think one of the questions and one of the responses around the quarterly review was framed around career development, which is great. But the purpose of that meeting is career development. The more regular check-ins are around, you know, monthly performance, how are we going against goal, any blockers, how is engagement, how do you feel as part of the team? And then also in the annual appraisal, or whatever format you choose in terms of frequency, there should always be a question linking their achievement back to their developmental goals. So is it clear, asking questions like, is it clear where you're going? Do you feel like you've had the support throughout the last period in terms of manager buy-in, in terms of investment in your own training? And if that's not, then as a manager or the person receiving the review, the next time you meet to discuss the outcome of the review, we have to have actions around what we're going to do. We have to have actions around putting a proper career plan in place, getting coaching, getting, development, getting a budget approved for training. So yeah, it's the constant checking in. It has to be front of mind. It's like what I said in answering to the last question. If we're serious about performance development conversations, they have to be development led. And so we need to make space for those, and the question should be focused on that.
For sure. That's great. Thanks, Noel.
No problem.
Amazing. Any other questions, Lena, from any of our attendees or any socials?
That's all from me. Now, I haven't able to see the Q&A box, so if you just want to take a quick look, but that is all. That's all from me.
We just actually had one more question there, if we've time. I think we do. Yeah. So based on your experience and the Frankly tool, what is your best recommended approach for reviewing team performance? We use the TOM, Target Operating Model tool in Excel. I wonder, is there any other approach that you can recommend, Noel?
Yeah, great question. Again, we probably dived into it in another webinar. We could probably do a whole one on this, but a core component of Frankly is OKRs. So setting goals that are cross-functional team based, whereby we can have one or many people as part of a goal. I think that's a really good way to think about team performance. So what OKRs allow you to do is to really focus on the outcome. So what are we working towards? So the objective is that if we get here, we've done really, really well. So it's aspirational, but the key results are then going to be very target driven. So they're the signpost as to how we're doing against target. Yeah. Key results can be owned by one or many. And I jump straight into OKRs because I think team performance is so important. Yeah. But it also needs to be linked back to what the company is trying to achieve. So with OKRs, you can link team and department goals to company objectives. And then it's about contribution. So it's about, again, thinking about one-to-ones. It could be doing an engagement survey of the team, starting there, thinking about how engaged is the team? Is everyone pulling their weight? Do we have the right ingredients within the team? Mm-hmm. And it comes back, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but it comes back to one-to-ones, and it comes back to really strong team management and team leadership. So if a manager is only meeting with some of the team, people are going to become disengaged. They're going to underperform. They're not going to feel like a key contributor. And the last thing would be regular recognition and praise for that team. So again, we talk about feedback and praise in the flow of work. Mm-hmm. So thinking about where your team, if you're a strong engineering team, it's likely you're in Slack or you're in Microsoft Teams. You spend a lot of your time in those kind of products. So if a project is released and there's a big win within the team, we should be celebrating then. We should be in the context of, that was a really good release. Or if a marketing do an amazing campaign, we should be really calling that out in the context of the impact it's had on the business. So yeah, try and summarize that. It's regular team recognition. It's making sure that there's team level goals. So I'm not in a corner operating in a silo on my own, doing my own thing. And also that silo should always be connected to the strategy. So making sure team goals are connected to what the company is trying to achieve, and then having regular one-to-ones. So really strong team leadership, that everyone is part of a one-to-one, not just some of the team. And, bringing all that back together in regular team meetings, regular town halls to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And ultimately, regardless of where I sit, if I'm sitting working remotely, working in a hybrid, I want to feel connected to what we're achieving, and I want that to be purposeful. So I need to understand that the work I'm doing is having the impact on the business, and I can clearly see that, and I feel like a key contributor within the team.
Amazing. Amazing. Fantastic. I don't think there was any other questions from any of the attendees or the socials. So just a reminder for everyone, first of all, to say thank you for joining us. It's wonderful to have everyone. This session was recorded, so we will be finishing the recording soon, and this will be going off then to all of the follow-up that we're going to be doing. There will be a blog as well available as well, so please obviously keep an eye on your inboxes. If anyone hasn't signed up for our content, please do. You'll get all the information about future webinars that will be happening once a month as well, and all of our other content that gets issued as well. My Calendly link will be in the emails, and if anyone would like a private demo, you can liaise with me directly there. I'd be happy to take you through reviews, setting up reviews, showing you how they work, and any of the other features within the product as well. Okay, and obviously then we'll be sending out a discount code for any attendees that were with us today for the product too. So just again, thank you so much. Noel, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. It was fantastic to get those insights.
Thank you, Claire. Well done. Yeah, great session.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we'll see you in the next webinar.
Great stuff.
Great. Okay.
Bye all.
Everyone, take care.
Thanks, guys.